Good afternoon all, and morning for some, and welcome to Optoro's product release webinar. Today's webinar is an exclusive walkthrough of our next generation SmartRTV product. Before we begin, let's cover a few housekeeping items. First, attendees will be on listen-only mode throughout the webinar. If you're having any technical difficulties, please first check your audio settings by clicking in the top left-hand corner. And if you're still having issues, please reach out to us via the chat function, also in the top left-hand corner of your screen. The purpose of this webinar is to provide you with an overview and demo of the new SmartRTV product, hear from an Optoro client about the experience using the product in the warehouse, and answer any questions that you may have. As we walk through the new feature, we encourage you to submit any questions in the Q&A box in the top left-hand corner of the screen. We'll have time to address those during the Q&A portion of the webinar. So let's jump right in. I'll start with the introductions. My name's Jordan, and I'm on our product management team here at Optoro, where we help to define and build the software products that our clients use in their warehouses and their back office administration. Today, I'm just playing the role of host and MC. With me today are two presenters. The first is my colleague Brian, who's Optoro's product manager for client channels. That includes our software that helps disposition, fill inventory back to a client's primary stock, to donation and recycle channels, and the subject of today's conversation, back to vendors. Brian will give us an overview of Optoro's SmartRTV product and a demo of the tool. We also have David with us from Groupon. David is here representing the operations and logistics function at Groupon Goods, the $1 billion e-commerce division of Groupon. Groupon Goods sells everything from apparel to electronics, and David manages all aspects of customer returns, including vendor partnerships. So thank you both for joining us today. Let me outline the run of show here, and then we'll move on. We just got through the introductions. I'll talk for a few more minutes to provide a little background on Optoro. Then Brian is going to walk us through the SmartRTV product and show us a demo of the product in action. After that, we'll hand the mic to David to talk about his experience using the product and his experience at Groupon more broadly. Then we'll move into the Q&A, and we'll try to get to as many questions as possible before we wrap up. So let's get started. Just in case we have any folks on the line who are not as familiar with Optoro, I'll give a quick overview of the company. We spent the last several years building out our cloud-based reverse logistics platform called Optoro, which is designed to enable you to automate your entire reverse logistics operation and maximize the value from your returned and excess inventory. The last several months have been really exciting for us and our clients. We've announced a new strategic alliance with UPS, which enables us to provide our clients with a one-stop shop for all of their reverse logistics needs. We've also continued to make significant investments in our technology, and today we're thrilled to share one of those with you. To set the stage for that, I'd like to quickly go over the four key components of the Optoro reverse logistics platform. The first box, top left-hand side of this screen, is our intuitive warehouse management tools, which guide your warehouse teams through the entire reverse logistics process, from receiving inventory through fulfillment, making your reverse supply chain as efficient as possible. Our user experience and design teams aim to build interfaces that require limited to no onboarding and training for warehouse users in this area, because we know how important efficient and productive onboarding is for you and your third-party providers. The next area of our platform is our smart disposition, and that's the second box on the left-hand side of this screen. This is really the core of our software. It's the predictive pricing algorithm that automatically routes each unit of inventory to the highest recovery channel, whether that's a primary channel, a clearance or outlet channel, Optoro's secondary marketplaces, Blink and Bulk, back to a vendor, or to an end-of-life channel like donation or destroy. This is made possible because of what's on the right-hand side of the screen, the integration of a client's existing channels and Optoro's secondary market channels into an automated remarketing platform. The last part of our platform is our reporting and dashboards, which you see at the bottom. These provide visibility into your returned and excess inventory from the point of receipt all the way through to the point of final disposition, whether that's the sale on a secondary marketplace, the disposition back to a vendor, or something else. When it comes to our return to vendor process, which is the subject of today's webinar, it's really these three left components of the stack that play the biggest part. So as Brian shows you our product and as David explains how Groupon uses it, you should be able to see each of these components being activated, whether that's the warehouse tools that guide the operation within the warehouse, whether it's our smart disposition algorithms that determine what inventory is right for return to vendor, or if it's our reporting and control that allows RTV managers and others to see what's happening within the return to vendor process. So with that introduction, I'll hand over the mic to Brian, and he'll talk specifically about our SmartRTV product.
Thanks, Jordan. Back in 2015, we introduced our first version of SmartRTV. Over these last few years since then, we've interviewed and worked with dozens of RTV and warehouse managers across the country to map out the unique requirements and challenges of the RTV process. Through our research, we've noticed that there's an incredible opportunity to improve the traditional approach here, which is too often manual and siloed. So to highlight some of the most common problems, I want to talk first about limited visibility into RTV inventory. Most retailers don't have much visibility at all. They often don't know how much inventory is on hand and getting processed in RTV without getting on the warehouse floor themselves. They're not always confident in how much credit to take or how much they're owed, or even how to respond when a vendor claims they've sent the wrong inventory. So as a result, these retailers we're seeing are very reactive, and they're always looking backwards to diagnose problems or bottlenecks in the RTV process. The next major challenge we noticed is that retailers don't have the right systems in place to standardize and continuously improve their RTV process. In the warehouse, inventory management runs off paper, runs off spreadsheets and rules that people have memorized. I'd actually say that maybe in half the warehouses that that's extremely decentralized. No one else can access this information in real time. None of this data can be used to analyze patterns and returns or optimize vendor performance and even RTV agreements. And so these are some of the challenges we've set out to solve with our smart. Of how the op. At the end of the day, we want to boost recovery, reduce processing costs, and increase transparency throughout the RTV value chain. Let's just take a little bit of time to talk a little bit more in depth about each of these. We're always looking to maximize recovery for our clients' reverse programs. Using our smart disposition algorithms, we can order condition units to RTV first and keep the best condition units to return back to stock instead, where they can net the highest recovery. And when vendors deny RTV units, we can instantly list those denials on secondary D2C or B2B markets to capture as much of the residual value as possible. Secondly, as a direct result of the challenges we just walked through, I'd say that the most difficult part of RTV today is managing the approval process across dozens or hundreds of vendors who all have unique return requirements. To reduce processing costs, which is basically all of the training required, the time spent memorizing rules or keeping track of vendor emails, and the potential for error or slowdown that all of that can create. To reduce these costs, we've standardized the end-to-end process for RTV managers who handle the admin component as well as the warehouse operations. I can show you what I mean when we get to our product demo. Finally, on the right-hand side, we often realize that there's a big disconnect between warehouse operations and the RTV manager, who can be sitting far away from the floor, maybe at headquarters in another state, as is the case for Groupon. So we've designed an experience that makes remote RTV management not only possible, but easy, with real-time transparency into what's going on the floor and reporting tools to track historical RA and shipment activity. And so to tee up our product demo, I want to walk through how our clients are using Optoro's SmartRTV today to optimize their programs. Before SmartRTV, we noticed two disjointed processes, one for warehouse operations, managing inventory, and another for the RTV manager processing RAs. These two sides of the house were linked through emails, through phone calls, spreadsheets, pen and paper checklists, or in many cases, an RTV manager had to be physically present on the warehouse floor for everything to work. As you can imagine, there's a lot of overhead, a lot of coordination in there that we've been able to eliminate by bringing these two groups together on one integrated cloud-based platform. And so this platform supports RTV process at several different stages. The first, as you can see on the left, is smart disposition. This is how we determine RTV eligibility. OptiTurn is able to ingest vendor rules, unit conditions, RTV eligibility checks, and dispositions to RTV only those units that have a chance of being credited. Second, the RTV manager can see all of this qualified inventory on the desktop tool and create virtual RAs to send to vendors. After the vendor responds, the RTV manager, with just a few clicks, can create two pick lists for the warehouse, one for vendor approvals for shipping back to a vendor, and one for denials, which can get remarketed and liquidated through our other channels. When it's time for inventory management, step 3 up here on the screen, warehouse operators using the Android handhelds that power all of our client warehouses, they get a unit or pallet-based pick list to process those approvals for shipping, and while those denials get redispositioned to test and grade or back to the secondary markets, as I just mentioned. And after units have been returned to vendor, the RTV manager or accounting team can search for shipment manifests to build credit memos for only those units that have shipped. This is really important for avoiding credit disputes down the line. Fifth, and finally, RTV managers have access to a suite of reporting and analytics that helps them benchmark vendor performance, document RA and shipment activity, and identify areas for program improvement. Okay, well, that's definitely enough of an overview. So let's dive right into the product and show you what it looks like.
So Brian, we'll share your screen for this. There you go.
All right, thanks, Jordan. So what we're looking at here is the homepage of OptiTurn's SmartRTV tool. We have designed it very much as a workflow tool for RTV managers to centralize and streamline the way they process return authorization requests. Our goal is to maximize the number of credits our clients can receive while minimizing the time they spend on administrative overhead. The actions RTV managers take in this tool link directly to handhelds that warehouse operators use, and that makes for a tight, integrated process. We'll walk through the RA management experience before getting into some of the reporting analytics that SmartRTV makes possible. So at the top of your screen here, you can see 6 different tabs, and the first of which is live inventory. This is where all of the units end up that Smart Disposition qualifies as RTV eligible. As you can see, these units get rolled up by vendor, and RTV managers can sort vendors by the age of the oldest unit, the aggregate cost value for a given vendor, the number of units, and the number of distinct warehouse locations. Clicking into a vendor will show a list of all of the locations belonging to that vendor, and clicking into a location will show a list of all of the units that are in that storage location. And so this type of visibility is extremely useful for remote RTV managers who might not physically be present on the warehouse floor. In live inventory, you can group units and locations together to create virtual RA submissions. These all live in the awaiting submission tab. When working with Groupon, we actually noticed that their RTV manager and warehouse manager would use spreadsheets to coordinate which inventory was being sent to vendors for approval. Once the RTV manager submitted an RA request, he would color code the pallet location differently on a spreadsheet, and the warehouse would know to stage that pallet separately from the rest of live inventory, so it wouldn't get mixed in with new units that were being received every day. At other warehouses we visited, we observed that pallets were not only being staged separately, but they were being wrapped and placed back on storage racks, only to be unwrapped and reopened to pull out units that vendors rejected. This type of coordination was inefficient and error-prone RA. We track all of the RAs they have submitted and are waiting back for approval right here in the pending approval tab. And so as soon as RTV managers hear back from a vendor with RA code, potentially some rejections, they can click into each of the RA submissions and take two possible actions. The first is to remove units that were rejected. These get added to a removals pick list on the warehouse handhelds, where they can get listed instantly on secondary markets or be picked for further testing and grading. The second is to create a shipment up here in the top right-hand corner with the units that were approved. These approved units get added to a shipping pick list on the warehouse handheld, where they'll be picked, packed, and shipped back to the vendor for credit. In the Ready to Ship tab, the fourth one over here, the RTV manager can keep track of all the shipments that are being processed and can follow up on any delays. Tracking numbers, RA codes, expected credit for a given shipment, those are all recorded and tracked in here. And when the final unit in the shipment has physically left the warehouse, the shipments will move over to the Ship tab, which is a digital repository of all the shipments that have physically left the warehouse. And this can be sorted by ship dates, and it's easy to drill in and look in for shipment manifests. Again, the goal here is to make the RTV process as simple and standardized as possible to optimize program performance and reduce processing overhead. And now that we have a lot of this operational tool in place, we're also able to take all of this data we're collecting and do a few fun and useful things with it. I'm navigating now to our RTV performance tracker, where RTV managers, as well as other stakeholders across your organization, can view centralized historical RA and shipment activity, and can also look through additional insights and analytics. And so right here at the top of the performance tracker, you can see a summary of a number of stats for a given RTV program. So in the top left here, you see all of the shipments in the month to date. You see the total expected credit, the number of units shipped, and the average cycle time for all of those units. You can also see a list of the number of RAs submitted during that time. A little bit further down below, you can see a list of vendors across the entire program. On each one of these cards, you see the vendor name, the total expected credit, the number of units shipped, the average response time for that vendor, and the approval rate. And so at the top here, you can order by a number of different fields. You have expected credit. You can also look at the highest or lowest approval rate, and even the fastest or slowest response time. So clicking on any of these will filter out, and it's interesting to see which of your vendors are the slowest to get back. Just want to comment that this is demo data here, so no need to yell at Synex over here. And so in addition to RTV managers, accounting teams have also been asking for this type of reporting, and as they look to streamline the process of generating credit invoices for their vendors. So just scrolling up here, we can click into a list of all shipments for a given time, and with just a few clicks, straight from this page without any communication overhead needed with an RTV manager or the warehouse floor, the accounting teams can download individual shipment manifests that include all of the information they need to generate credit invoices. This includes the vendor name and information, the date that units have shipped out of the warehouse, the total expected credit, as well as a unit level list of all of the units that have left. And so with just a few clicks, they can download shipment reports and ultimately get a notification with a list of shipment manifests that they can use to generate their credit invoices. And so a lot of the functionality that you're seeing now has been made possible with the continuous feedback and ideas from our clients. We're the true industry experts here. As we work with our customers like David, we've been able to build a robust tool that our customers tell us can support their end-to-end process and optimize RTV operations for stakeholders both on the warehouse floor as well as in corporate headquarters. And so with that, I'd love to turn it over to David, who can share a lot more about Groupon's experience using our product, as well as more about their RTV process in general.
All right. Thanks, Brian. So I'll give a brief overview of Groupon Goods and then my role at the company, and then talk a little bit about how we use Optoro and then specifically RTV. So Groupon Goods is the e-commerce arm of Groupon. As Jordan mentioned, we sell over $1 billion worth of inventory annually across a wide variety of product categories, from apparel to electronics to home goods. So with that comes a lot of returns, obviously, and we needed a solution to manage all of them. So my role at Groupon, I'm responsible for all of our customer returns in reverse logistics. So maximizing the recovery we get from those returns and ensuring that everything's dispositioned as efficiently as possible. But just real quick, prior to working with Optoro, we handled returns primarily through a third-party relationship, sort of an outsourced warehouse where we didn't have direct control of the inventory and couldn't really see the inventory as it came in and handle it appropriately. So we were able, through our partnership with Optoro, to bring that in-house and do a lot of this now in our own warehouse. So a quick walkthrough of our timeline of the relationship with Optoro. We started working with the company in late 2014 with some of our excess inventory and undeliverables. We started processing some of our customer returns in April of 2015 and then launched the RTV program shortly after that. Couple new launches since then as we've scaled up the program. And here we are today. We're happy with our recovery rates and all that entails. And we really use the complete suite of Optoro offerings, from return to vendor to direct to consumer sales through Blink, business to business through bulk, and then a lot of the alternative disposition channels as well. So specifically with return to vendor, there's a couple benefits that we get out of the tool that we weren't able to really get before. The first, really a lot of this comes from tracking inventory at the individual unit level. So from the second a return comes into the building and is scanned, we know, we can track the full life cycle of that unit, who touched it, when they touched it, where it is, and how it's being dispositioned. So that level of visibility really was not something that we had before, and it really helps streamline the operations and gives a complete picture of our entire returns process. I really like that RTV specifically is integrated with the rest of the returns flow. So the unit is dispositioned to return to vendor basically from the second it hits our warehouse. But if there ever is an exception, right, if a vendor rejects a unit, or we realize that it's not in compliance with our RTV agreements, or if it's not what the vendors are willing to take back, we can easily route that unit through a different disposition channel, essentially whatever Optoro deems to be the most profitable. So it could be put through testing and then sold to direct to consumer, or it could be sold in bulk. Out of this comes a lot of reporting for our finance and accounting teams. So this involves bringing a lot of inventory in, so we need very accurate tracking, and the tool definitely allows for that. So both within the RTV tool and then just generally across the rest of our returns. And then as Brian touched on, one of the real benefits that we get out of the tool is coordination between the folks at the warehouse and then someone on my team who actually manages the day-to-day, the coordination of RTV, so communicating with vendors and making sure that everything is actually executed. So we had a variety of different ways to handle that before. Brian touched on the Excel spreadsheets. Prior to that, while we were working with a third-party provider, there was a lot of emailed spreadsheets back and forth, a lot of individual emails, and just kind of, it was just messy. So there was a lot of errors that way, which we've really been successful in almost increase our recovery rate and just maximize the value of the return inventory. So all in all, it's been a success, and we're looking forward to continuing the program.
Great. Thanks, David. Let me just check to make sure the microphone is still working. Okay. So thanks, David and Brian, both of you, for presenting. David, for sharing your experience. Brian, for walking us through the portal. We've already heard some great feedback from our clients about this portal, David included. But if you have additional feedback based on what you saw, sorry, I'm just working on sharing this. There we go. If you have additional feedback based on what you saw, please don't hesitate to reach out to your account manager. And of course, we will try to answer some questions about the tool and David's experience with it right now. So we'll pause for a minute as people get their questions into the Q&A, which again is at the top left of your screen. There's a submit question Q&A box. So we'll give it a minute for questions to come in, and then we'll get started handling as many of them as we can. Okay, so we'll get started on the questions. We got one question about RTV's interplay with other available disposition channels. So let me just read this. Can you talk about how RTV interplays with other channels? If we enable RTV, D2C, and B2B via Optoro, how do they all work together? David, since you have sort of purview over all that, I think it'd be great to get your perspective on this.
Sure. So I can talk about how we manage this, which I think is probably just one of many possible ways. We actually define RTV eligibility of a product upfront, and we pass that to Optoro over the API integration we have with them. So essentially, when an item comes into the warehouse, the first check really that's being done is this item RTV? And if it is RTV, it's dispositioned through the RTV channel, and it goes to that portion of the warehouse. Items that are not RTV are sent directly to the other dispositions that we use, so direct-to-consumer B2B being the primary ones. After an item is sent to RTV, there's a possibility that through the course of discussion with the vendor, certain items get rejected from it. We're not able to actually RTV it, and then integrated into the tools functionality that we can use to disposition it essentially the second best way, right? So if we can't RTV it and get the full value of the product or close to it back, how can we maximize the recovery that we get? So I think it's a little button basically that says remove from RTV, and then essentially Optoro's tool takes over from there, and we just follow the prompts. So that's a little bit about how it's integrated. I don't know if you guys have anything to add on that.
Yeah, just a quick add-on. When an RTV manager hears that a unit is rejected, they can click on remove from RTV, as David mentioned, and that kicks off a process on the handheld where the pickers in the warehouse know to move units, and depending on whether or not a unit has enough information to be sold, maybe it needs a grade, in which case it will get taken to tested grade. But if it has enough information to be sold or listed online, the warehouse can, again, just follow the prompts and go through that process.
So thanks, guys. So Brian, that actually, what you're saying there gets to another question we got around warehouse design. So this question is around whether warehouses need to redesign their processes to use the RTV software. Could you speak to that more broadly around the interplay between RTV and other solutions and other dispositions and how it works within the physical four walls?
Yeah, sure. So the nice thing about working with so many great clients and working with so many warehouses that we've been able to observe a number of different approaches to RTV management, especially inventory management on the warehouse floor. The first major pattern that we noticed is that a lot of warehouses prefer to sort their inventory by vendor before submitting that inventory for approval. And so our tool can support pallet-based workflow where you are where you can lock each pallet by a specific vendor, and then once that pallet is submitted for a return authorization, we can lock that pallet from any new units being added to that. And so it's possible to almost treat that pallet as an entity and just carry that forward throughout the process until it's approved and shipped. And then any rejected units from a vendor will not be allowed to stay on that pallet before it can get shipped. So that's typically the first process that we've noticed that's very much around pre-palletizing inventory before hearing back from a vendor. The second type of workflow that we've noticed is where folks don't want to do that extra touch of removing units and instead palletize and pick units after they hear back from a vendor. And so in those cases, our tool allows you almost like a shopping cart just to select those units that you want to submit for approval. And then once you hear back from a vendor, you can just pick only those approved units and create a pallet from there. So our tool is designed to be extremely flexible, and there's no need to redesign any processes to get started with the tool. Over time, you might find that some ways are more efficient, and our tool will give you a chance to experiment with that.
Great. So another question we got was around original invoices for returns. Do we need to provide those? Does the client provide the invoice?
Yeah, so that's a good question. Typically, we've seen that all vendors have different requirements before they can accept units for approval and issue that return authorization number. And some of the I'd say more particular vendors who are looking for serialized units, and they typically look to tie those units back to a specific PO or invoice number. And so oftentimes clients can provide us that information up front, and we can link those units to issue. We're able to tie those together with the return authorization request and submit that. So in the cases where that is possible or a vendor requires it, that's definitely possible. But I wouldn't say that all vendors do require an invoice. And it's rare that they require a physical copy of an invoice and more just the invoice number.
So along the same topic, if there's a vendor credit dispute, which we know happens occasionally, how do we share information about the accuracy of the shipment?
Yeah, sure. I can take that one as well. So with our warehouse pick lists, we're able to ensure that there's a unit level accuracy and traceability to every single unit that has left the warehouse in a particular shipment. And once a unit has left the warehouse, we're able to record the tracking number as well as any other information about the carrier that might be involved in the pickup. And so as we showed earlier in the product demo, there's a reporting interface where either the accounting team or the RTV manager can look up shipments by a shipment ID or can search for specific units and pull up a unit level shipping manifest of everything that has left the warehouse. And it's possible to just share that over with vendors and reconcile the disputes that way. Typically, vendors just need to know what has left the warehouse and confirm the transit information before getting further in the dispute process.
And just to add, so in our experience, we've actually had a lot of success in going back when vendors do dispute something, because we have the confidence that everything did ship out because we have that unit level tracking. Whereas before it might have been, oh, well, you said you didn't get this. We don't really have a way of essentially proving you wrong. But now we can say, all right, this unit was picked by this person and shipped on this date. So there's been several examples where we've gone back, pushed back against the vendor, and they've actually said, oh, you're right, we found the missing box, or our mistake. So it's actually proven really valuable.
That's great. So we have two more. One of them I think we already got to, but I'll just confirm with you guys around what we do with rejected units. I think we covered that with the remarketing workflow description. So then we'll end on this question, which is around the RTV roadmap. question is, what's next for the RTV roadmap? And I guess, Brian, what do you guys have coming up that people might be curious to learn more about?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we've been streamlining a lot of these reporting tools and making it easier for accounting teams to pull out information to generate these credit invoices. And the next big item for us in our roadmap is to streamline the vendor management and configuration piece to help customize and further tailor the process for all the unique vendor requirements. So we'll be creating an administrative interface for all RTV managers to work with their vendors to edit information, whether it's customizing the RA templates that they send out, the different fields that each vendor requires, or customizing specific for a more seamless, self-serve, self-configurable RTV program that can really scale across not only dozens but hundreds of vendors. And that's something that we've definitely seen a real need from our clients, so we're looking forward to delivering that soon.
Great. Okay. Well, again, Brian and David, thank you for joining us to share more about SmartRTV and how the product works in action. To everyone on the call, thanks for your time. If you have any additional questions about SmartRTV or anything else, please feel free to reach out to your account manager. We've recorded this call, so if you are interested in a recording and you want to revisit something, please don't hesitate to ask. As always, the way we create these products is centered on our customers. David is a great example of that. So if you're interested in collaborating with our product team on their research on additional needs, please, we'd love to hear from you. Again, don't hesitate to reach out. And thank you again for joining.